Okay, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for being here today for the session Perusall using social e-readers to build community. I am Dr. Allison Boyer, Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning. For those of you who I don't know, and it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Rachel Gunter here with us today as our guest speaker and our resident expert on using Perusall in the classroom. Dr. Gunter received her PhD in history from Texas A&M University, and she is a professor of history here at Collin College on the Plano campus. Her research focuses on the women's suffrage movement and its effects on the voting rights of other groups, including immigrants, servicemen, World War I veterans, Mexican Americans, and African Americans. Her publications include Immigrant Declarants and Loyal American Women in the Journal of the Gilded Age and Progressive Era, and Without Us, It is Ferguson with a Plurality, Women's Suffrage and Anti-Ferguson Politics, in Impeached, the Removal of Texas Governor James E. Ferguson. She was also a consultant and co-writer for Citizen at Last, a documentary history of the Texas suffrage movement released earlier this year. She is also the Texas coordinator for the online biographical dictionary of the women's suffrage movement in the United States and serves on the executive advisory committee of the Handbook of Texas Women for the Texas State Historical Association. She is also active on Twitter at PhD Rachel, and her website is rmgunter.com. So Dr. Gunter, thank you so much for being here with us today. I will pass it off to you, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about Perusall today.
Thank you so much. Hopefully everyone can hear me okay. So we're talking about Perusall today, which is a social e-reader, and just kind of how it works. And how it lends itself to building community, and especially online classes, which is sometimes a little difficult to do. So we will dive right in. So for starters, what is a social e-reader? Well, our students are really used to social networking sites like Facebook and Twitter, right? We spend a lot of time hoping they're not doing that in our classrooms. But social e-readers allow professors to upload a selected reading in a very similar format. So instead of a Facebook wall, students see the assigned reading here in the middle and the center of the page. And they can highlight a line of text or an image, and then they can comment or ask a question about it. And they can respond to each other's posts asynchronously, just like you would on Facebook or Twitter. Now, all of the discussions appear in the box on the right labeled Current Conversations, so over here. They can upvote or like a comment or reply, and you see these little green marks here where people have done that. They can use hashtags in their responses, which you see in the lower left-hand corner. So they're using kind of the number of the discussion question there, but as you'll see in the presentation, they get pretty creative with their hashtags. Students can then click on the hashtags to view the comments using them. So I encourage students to do that before an exam. If they go back through their comments, they can start using key phrases or keywords. And then on the exam, which for me is open book, they can go back into Perusall and look for that keyword and then go through their conversations if they need a little refresher. If they're confused, they can even tag the professor in their comment. And when that happens, the professor gets an email notification and they can come see the discussion to try to answer the question. So it's a way of interacting that our students are really familiar with and feels very low stakes to them, but allows them to get to know each other and interact with the instructor, especially in ways that's familiar for them. The goal, of course, is to get students to actually do the reading, which we all complain about, of course, but it's also to build connections with their classmates. So you see interactions in Perusall that begin to sound a lot like in-class chatting between students, which I love. As you can see on page 1 of the first Perusall assignment in my classes, I explain to students that they are already split into groups, which I do in Canvas, and then I move those over to Perusall. And I ask them to comment on this particular line, introducing themselves to their group members. Perusall can either split the students into groups itself based on how many students you tell it to, or you can form those groups in Canvas and move them over, which is what I normally do. These intros tend to be a little more in depth than what I get just on discussion board threads. And I think it's because the format is kind of what students are used to. It's not unusual to keep conversations going in Perusall, whereas in discussion boards, I often find that a student will post and then they don't come back unless you require them to do so. Oftentimes there's back and forth between the students in Perusall. Sometimes the Perusall groups turn into their study groups and you'll see them start exchanging email addresses. Once we move to real comments on the assigned readings, the discussions also tend to be a bit more in depth because they're all working off the text right in front of them. It's not quite like a discussion board where you may have them read a text and then come to comment on it without the text directly in front of them, the way this sets it up. Sometimes it's little things that students comment on, and in doing so help each other understand the reading better. So in this reading, they talked about jimmies on ice cream, and the students got a little confused. Does anyone know what a jimmy is? And they mark it as a question, meaning they want an answer. They're really confused. Somebody says, I could probably try to Google this, but we've been warned against that, which from me, they know they're only supposed to use sources assigned in the classroom. So it's kind of an in joke there. And then we get, I believe jimmies refer to sprinkles. It's an older term for sprinkles. A lot of older people in the South use it. And then people joking that they're old and still don't know that term, but just more kind of interaction between the students than you would normally get, especially in just an online class. Here, students point out interesting bits of the reading. This church had to be evacuated after the balcony started failing under the weight of a crowd gathered to hear a man condemned to death, as well as about 2 sermons about him. So the students are commenting on the stuff they think is super interesting. Here, students begin discussing indigenous fishing methods. And then in this little, in their discussion, they end up comparing the cooperation described in the fishing methods to a scene in Finding Nemo where all the fish swim down at the same time to escape a net. And their discussions really add to their understanding of the reading in a way that just reading the text is not going to do. Sometimes students point or post comments just to help each other out. So here a student points out that this paragraph, highlighted in purple, is something we also cover in lecture, and that there is a question on the lecture quiz about it. So they're kind of giving everybody a heads up there. Students can ask the professor specific questions if something in the reading is unclear to them. So this student tagged me using the @ symbol, just like you would on Facebook or Twitter. And I received this email notification that a student had asked a question. So I click View Conversation, right, this button right here, and this is what pops up. So in the purple is the specific text the student is asking about. And if you've ever had a student just send you an email asking a general question about a reading that's actually really specific to one part, you're not sure what they're asking about, this is super helpful because we know exactly what they're confused on. They wanted to know if it related to their 5th discussion question, which appeared on a previous page. And I was able to answer the question and explain what the passage meant to the student in my reply here. And because the student happened to do her reading during the workday, I saw the email notification while at my computer and answered her question within about 20 minutes. Now, obviously that wouldn't happen if the student was reading at 2 a.m., but a timely reply, even if we're talking within a day, for a student struggling with a reading can really make a difference. Not only are the students engaging with each other and the reading, they're able to bring their professors into the conversation when needed as well. And because Perusall auto grades, I can focus on the conversations and interactions without having to worry about going through and scoring all of them. Students can ask a question in their conversations using that question button to let their peers know they really do want an answer to this. If another student doesn't know the answer but thinks it's a good question, they can also hit that question button. And usually you get a group member willing to answer it, or if they get really desperate, they'll tag me in. In this case, another student has answered the question and several students thank them for explaining the concept. Here, a student didn't tag me in specifically, but she used the question button to ask a question of her group. And I was going through making sure they were using Perusall and didn't have questions about it. So I saw it and responded before they did. Here, a student asked a question about what Puritans in the Salem witch hunt meant when they said they saw, quote, the black man, and several students chime in referencing other parts of the text or lecture to help explain this, which is really nice as the professor that they're teaching each other and I don't have to come in every time they have a question. So I'm just going to go through a few more examples of what class interactions on Perusall assignments look like. to give you an idea of kind of how this works. In this one, the students were reading about enslaved sugar production and how dangerous it was. And the students began discussing how much enslaved cotton production was taught at their high school and how unfamiliar they were with this topic before coming to a college class. Similar conversations happened throughout this piece as students comment on realizing how little they knew about the subject. Here's another comment where a student actually tagged me in, this time just to say that they thought the article was really interesting. The student said they'd heard of Juneteenth on the internet, but they didn't really know what it was. I had one that said they didn't even know it was a real thing. But these are the kinds of interactions I'm used to with in-person classes, and rarely do you get this in an online class, but you get it in Perusall. It helps students feel comfortable enough to reach out with these kinds of comments and just little tidbits, and it helps form a community even within an online classroom, both between the students, but also between the professor and the students. In this reading about the Boston Massacre as part of the American Revolution, you can see students respond in ways that have been shaped by their use of social media. So like I mentioned, they can use that pound sign to form hashtags. So the student called the wife of one of the British soldiers involved a hashtag ugly personality. And students get pretty creative with these. In student view in the lower left corner, they can see all of the hashtags and kind of go through the conversations based on those. We have another hashtag here, starting a thread about neighbors on both sides of the Boston Massacre, this time using hashtag no friend of mine to describe the relations between neighbors that turned deadly. And another student responds that it reminds her of the Salem witch hunt readings we did, where neighbors with grudges often accused each other. So not only are they interacting together, they're bringing up other parts of the reading and other readings. This is a student conversation on a primary source from a speech from conservative President Harding about returning to normalcy after World War I. And students begin discussing how often that idea has been applied throughout US history and whether or not you can ever return to normal after a war. And the conversation stays pretty closely tied to the text as it's all connected back to the line highlighted in purple. The yellow highlights are other conversations we could click on or open as well. The other way to jump through those conversations is to hit this play button and it'll move you to the next conversation in the list. So Perusall works with more than just text. There are textbooks in Perusall you can select, though I would stick to the free options, as having them purchase a textbook through Perusall might create a bit of a headache for us. You can input a web page and have that be the assigned reading. I usually save a few short articles as PDFs and then draft some discussion questions for each one. I then combine all of that into a single PDF for a single Perusall assignment and upload it using the documents from my computer section here. There we are. I could also save those in Dropbox and upload them that way. And once you have a reading in one Perusall class, you can copy it into a new class using the materials from another course option. And that's super handy when you teach multiple classes of the same course or when you want to move last semester's readings into this semester's classes. You can also use Perusall with videos, which is a bit like YouTube or watching a video on Facebook where people can comment. I have a colleague who did this with the duck and cover film with Bert the Turtle from the 1950s, teaching kids to take cover during a nuclear attack. And he said the format worked really well for short clips like that. You can also assign podcasts in Perusall. So there's a lot you can do with it. But the point of social e-readers is to get students to engage the reading as a group. But Perusall also allows you to select your settings for auto-grading each Perusall assignment. And I tend to select pretty lenient auto-grading settings. I don't want students trying to game the system or calculate exactly how many comments they need or how much they have to read for full credit. I want them to realize if they read the whole assignment, they'll get full credit. If they comment once on each of the 4 to 6 articles I put in a single assignment, they'll earn full credit. There are 6 different components to the Perusall grade, and each has a target value between 0 and 100% of full credit that can be earned for that component. And of course, you get to set that target as the instructor. So the target is the maximum amount of points or percentage of credit a student can earn from that component. If you want commenting to be worth 1/3 of the full credit on the assignment, then you set annotation content at 33%. You can set these so that they add up to more than 100%. And in fact, Perusall encourages you to do that so that there are multiple ways that students can participate. So some students, just aren't very comfortable having a bunch of comments or conversations. So I set it so if they read the whole document, they'll probably earn full credit anyway. Some students will spend more time on the comments and replying, and so they can still earn credit that way. Once in Perusall, you click on Settings in the left menu and then Scoring at the top to adjust all of these settings. So I'm just going to kind of quickly run through what those settings are, because it can be a little intimidating the first time you log in and take a look at all of this. The first thing under your under settings and such is annotation content. And underneath that is your content score target, which means students can earn up to this percentage of full credit based on comment quality. Now, I have mine set pretty high because I want them to earn big points for good comments. Next, you tell Perusall how many of a student's comments it should score. So I have it set at 5, which means a student can earn the full credit possible for commenting if they have 5 highly rated comments or annotations. If they have more than 5 comments, it'll take the 5 best ones. After that is the point value for the 3 kinds of annotations. So Perusall automatically separates out their comments as being low, medium, or high quality based on how complex they are. Perusall automatically sets these at 0, 1, and 2, but I adjust these out to 0, 2, and 4 because I want a bigger difference between low and high quality comments. Then you can select if responses after the deadline count for grading and how you'd like annotations that are late to be counted, if at all. You can also set a penalty for responses that are not evenly distributed. So if a student posted 5 high quality annotations on, say, the first 3 pages of a 30-page reading, and then they didn't comment again after that, they wouldn't earn full credit if this penalty is turned on. The opening assignment component is exactly what it sounds like. Students can earn credit for every time they open the assignment before the deadline. Now, I set this one pretty low as I want more than just opening the assignment. But if you wanted to spur more discussion and replies, you wanted students to come back to it multiple times, you could set this higher to try to encourage that. The reading component lets you set a target for how much of the full score students can earn for reading every page of the document. So if they only look at the first 10 pages of a 30-page reading, they wouldn't get full credit here. So it actually wants them to look at every page in the assignment. Then we have the active reading time component, and this is earned by students actively reading the assigned reading. So this is not just opening the document or even scrolling through it. Perusall is looking to see if someone is at the computer, and of course it's not turning on a camera to do that. And I don't tell students how it does this, but it is tracking if they type a comment, do they move their mouse, are they scrolling down the screen? And if they go a whole 2 minutes without any activity, it stops giving them credit for active reading. And this is one of my favorite parts of Perusall. Students earn credit by actually doing the reading. So the active reading increment is how much of the total credit they earn for each minute of active reading. So for every minute, they get 2.5% of that possible 35 they get just for reading. And yes, I have had students try to open the reading and just leave it open to see if Perusall would give them credit. And then they email me confused as to why their grade was so low. So had this happen, we've got an example here on the slide. I went to check and this is what I found. On the left, you see the grade book. And obviously I've kind of, kind of limited your view so you can't see who we're talking about. And it gives you their grade. And if you click on the grade, it gives you why they got that grade. So the student earned a 5 out of 10, and I clicked on his grade to see why. And Perusall shows me how it calculated his grade. So he didn't post a comment or annotation, so he got no credit there. He got 1% of the 5% possible for opening the reading. I offered 35% credit for viewing each page of the assigned reading, but he only earned 20% of that, meaning the student did not view most of the assigned reading. Now look at his active reading component, 1%. In other words, the student scrolled through a few pages, maybe read the first few of them, and then left it open, hoping it would just give him credit. And I can see on the student tab in Perusall, shown in the screenshot on the right, that he actually had it open for an hour and a half. But because he wasn't actively reading or commenting, he failed the assignment. And I set my Perusall auto grade settings to be pretty lenient, like I've said, but they still don't let students get away with this. The getting responses target is what it sounds like as well. Students earn credit for writing comments and questions based on whether it gets responses from other students. The getting responses increment is how much of that target they earn for getting responses to a single comment or question. So if you want to encourage discussion, conversation, and community, I recommend setting these pretty high because students will figure out that the more they comment, the better their grades are. Upvoting is basically liking a comment the way one would on Facebook or Twitter. And the upvoting target is how much of full credit they can earn through basically upvoting or liking other students' comments, and by writing comments that get upvoted by other students. So there are two increments on this one. The first is how much of that target they earn by receiving upvotes. The second is how much of it they earn by giving other students upvotes or liking their comments. This is another cool thing in Perusall, the analytics. So here's what the analytics look like on an assignment of mine for another class. You can see 88% of the class in this little green pie chart here earned full credit. 8% did some of the work but didn't earn full credit, and 4% just didn't do the assignment. You can see how many comments the class put on the assignment, how many questions they asked, and if anyone clicked the button to indicate a question was answered. So that's all here. You can see the average amount of time students spent on the assignment, or at least with the document open. You can see the most upvoted annotation. So what is the class reading and liking the most? And if you click on the analytics button in the second bar from the top, you get more options as well. It'll also tell you the most active students in that assignment. So here are some of the other analytics it gives us. This is the grade distribution for that assignment. We also can see the student activity report. You can see how much time the students spent actively reading, how many annotations they made, if they got upvotes, that sort of thing. It offers us a submission time heat map, so you can see when students are doing the reading, right? That might adjust when you're going to make stuff due. And here is the page view report. So this shows us how many times each page of an assignment was viewed, and on average, how long students spent on that page. And if you've got a tricky assignment, you may be able to use that to look at which parts of it students found most challenging. Now, students have responded really well to Perusall in my classes. I began using it in summer 2020. It does take them a week or two to get used to it, right? It's very new for many of them. And I do keep a Canvas page in the class resources module called How to Use Perusall, so that I can easily refer them back to that if they have questions and stuff as we go through the semester. Now, when preparing this presentation, I asked some of my academic Twitter friends what I should be sure to tell you about Perusall, and here's some of their responses. Shannon talks about how accessible Perusall can make readings because students can adjust the font and type size or zoom in on the reading. There's also a function where Perusall will read the screen for students as well. Of course, students with disabilities likely have a screen reader they could use for this. And you do have to make sure that it is a readable PDF or website that you've assigned. Brian notes how automatic scoring lets him focus on engaging students in discussion instead of just grading them. And he also likes using it with videos and podcasts. Stephanie is at a large university with pretty large class sizes, but in a smaller section, she uses the comments to be able to get extra resources to students based on their interests. And Carol warns us about peculiarities syncing Perusall with your LMS, as she's had some difficulties with Blackboard. I haven't had a lot of issues with Canvas, but I'll walk you through kind of how to set that up here in just a minute. So if you like the setup and you're thinking about using it in your own class, let's talk about how you go about setting up Perusall. First things first, Colin already has a Perusall license. So that means as long as you are using freely available content, it's completely free for your students, right? Colin already pays for access to this. So the first thing you need to do if you want to use Perusall is email them at support@perusall.com and request credentials. They'll want proof that you work at Colin or at another school that uses Perusall. And when I did this, they asked me for an institutional webpage that showed my name, email address, and title or affiliation. So I sent that as well as a copy of my faculty ID. I know adjuncts have sent screenshots of their classes that were listed online, and that worked too. So it doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something to let them know that you work at Colin because Colin has that license. And don't feel like you have to take a ton of notes on this bit. All the slides will be available on the website when we're done as well. So once they verify you, Perusall will send an email with a link, and you click that link to access your credentials. Now, big warning here, they say over and over again that they will only show you this one time, which means you have to save the info for future use, which means I took a screenshot of it, I saved it as a PDF, I took a picture with my camera. Redundancy is key here. If your computer is set up to remember your passwords, that can be helpful too, because it can remember your consumer key and shared secret in Canvas after you put it in. So once you have your credentials, you go over to Canvas and log into the class you want to try Perusall in. You click on Settings in the vertical menu on the left, and then click on Apps. And then in the little search bar, you look for Perusall. And once the logo appears, you click on the logo. All right, so just like you would turn on any other external tool in Canvas. All right, so this is what comes up, a little explanation of Perusall, and we click Add App, and it will ask us for that consumer key and our shared secret, which we've saved in a million different places, right? So enter that information and then click Add App once more. And there you have it. You now have Perusall in your Canvas class. So you go to Assignments and make a new assignment, and you can set the point value for whatever you want it to be, right? However you'd like that to work. And you'll make sure they match the points you've set in Perusall later. Now, here's the really important part for syncing. You have to make sure that the name of the assignment in Canvas is the same as the name of the assignment in Perusall. That's how the two programs read that this is the same assignment, and it will let it move grades over for you. Under submission type, click External Tool, and then find Perusall in the drop-down menu. Right, so External Tool as your submission type, and then you'll find Perusall here. Once you do this, you can click on the new assignment and open it. So I always set it to load in a new tab. So this is the screen it gives me in Canvas. We click here to open it. There isn't an assignment in Perusall yet because I haven't made that, but this will ensure that Perusall has seen this Canvas class, and now it will load in your Perusall account. So now it will take us over to Perusall, where the class is in your Perusall account. And you'll log in there, and the class you entered in Canvas should be listed on the front page under My Classes. And if you click on that, you'll arrive at the same page that we got through just by clicking that last page in Canvas. So you can enter in specifics for your class, including the size of groups you want, or if you're like me and you do that in Canvas, just leave that. Then we click on the Library tab to actually add our readings up here. So select how you want to add your content. I choose documents from my computer because I've got everything saved as a PDF. And once I click that in the little Finder box, I select the PDF I want, right? But there's lots of different ways to choose material here. Perusall will upload the content and begin to process it, and it lets you know that you can log off during this process. So at first it'll tell you it's uploading, and then when it switches to processing, you can log off. I found that it helps speed things along if the articles you combine into a PDF are similar in page size. And this process usually takes a few minutes. I have a couple articles that have larger images in them. They're bigger files, they take a little longer. So don't be concerned if it takes 10 minutes or so to upload a single reading. Once it loads, you can see the document in your library. So here's my library, there's the document. All right. You'll see the options to open it, edit it, assign it, or delete it. And I suggest opening it just to make sure that it's loaded the way you like and it looks the way you want it to look. So now the assignment is it's in your Perusall library, but you actually want to make the assignment. So I'm going to hit on the assignment tab here, the green Add Assignment button. And Perusall opens a drop down with all the content you've uploaded into your library. So I've only got one reading in here, so it's only showing me the one. So there's my content to assign. I pick the one reading I want, and then it gives me a few other options. I normally choose assign all content because I've put these things together for a single reading that I want one grade for. But say you had a larger book chapter and you wanted to do half of it this week and half of it next, you could divide that reading into two separate assignments in Perusall, and they would be graded separately, but you don't have to scan in two separate files. After clicking Next Step, it gives you some more options. First is the due date or the submission deadline in Perusall. And if you selected to allow students to submit late work in your scoring settings, then students can still get credit for working after this date. One of the cool things in Perusall is I've had students who were ill and they went in 2 days later and did the reading anyway, trying to keep up with class, and then let me know about it. And when I went in to give them extra time, it already gave them credit for the work they had done after the deadline, but before I moved that deadline for them. If you do not select for students to get credit after the deadline, then any reading or work done after this date would not change their grade. But of course, they can still go in and see the reading as long as you have that available for them. Again, the most important part of any Perusall assignment is making sure that the name is exactly the same as you put it in Canvas. That ensures that Perusall can move those grades over to Canvas and you won't have any time syncing those. It'll save you a lot of headaches if you make sure that's the case. You can also add particular instructions for this assignment if you like. You can set a date for when the material will become visible, though I don't normally bother with this because I control that on the Canvas side of things. There's a couple of other options on this page. You can have students read an assignment anonymously, where any comment they post is anonymous, but you still know what each student is doing and they still get auto-graded. You can make the assignment optional, and if you do that, it won't appear in the gradebook at all. You can also stop Perusall from sending reminder emails because it will remind students when a deadline's approaching if they haven't done the reading. So after you have all those settings the way you like them, click Next Step once more. And the final thing to do is set up how you want it to be scored. So if you've already selected your scoring under settings, like we did earlier, you just use those here, use course scoring settings. If for some reason you wanted to score this one differently than the rest of the assignments in your class, you could do that under custom scoring. And then you just click Save Changes, and there's our assignment successfully created in Perusall. So from here, we can open it, we can edit it, we can duplicate it. If you have a student who's ill and you need to extend a deadline, you do that here. If you've made it in Perusall first and now you want to go make that assignment in Canvas, you want to be sure that it's got the same title, you click this button to copy the title and then you just paste it into Canvas and you don't have to worry about any differences in the title names. So once students begin working on the assignment, again, you get all these sorts of analytics at the bottom, which is really useful to kind of see, is the class keeping up with the reading and how well they're doing. I always do one final check to make sure that the assignment in Canvas is opening properly in Perusall. So I just go back into Canvas and open up Perusall Reading 1, which is what I title mine, and click Load Perusall, and then make sure that it opens the way I want it to in Perusall. So if everything's set up correctly, the new window will open with the corresponding assignment. And you'll know your assignment link in Canvas will work to take students directly there, and it will send their grades back to Canvas as well, which is super important. For each assignment, the professor does have to click a button in Perusall to move those grades into Canvas. So when you're ready to release an assignment's grades, you go into the Perusall gradebook. So in Perusall, here's the gradebook, and it opens here and you just click this yellow button at the bottom, Release to Students, and it will migrate those grades back into Canvas for you, as long as that assignment has been created with the exact same name. The Perusall can only move grades if students accessed that assignment through the assignment link in Canvas. And that is why I recommend not keeping the Perusall link in the vertical menu in Canvas visible to students. Instead, I just post the assignment links in the course modules, and students click on the assignment links to access each assignment. This also means a lot of students who skip assignments will not have the zero move automatically because Perusall can't move it back unless they've at least. You can mark those grades as missing in Canvas and it'll sub in zeros that way. Finally, if a student drops the class, they don't automatically get dropped in Perusall, which is why you see the 4 zeros here in the gradebook. Those are students who have dropped. You can manually remove those students under the Student tab in Perusall if you like. Rarely you'll have a student log into one Perusall assignment and then navigate to another in Perusall. And in that case, they'll have a grade in Perusall, but it will also have that red exclamation mark letting you know Perusall couldn't move that grade back to Canvas for you. So you'll have to do that manually. This maybe happens to me once every other assignment, and I have 6 to 7 classes each semester. Canvas will also read these scores as having been submitted whenever you move them over. So I warn my students that as I move grades after the assignment is completed, Canvas will almost always read their Perusall scores as late. Now, I don't have Canvas's gradebook set to have any late penalties kick in, so that's not a problem for them, but you'll need to take that into account if you do have late penalties in Canvas. You'll need to come move these a little earlier, or maybe even make your due date in Canvas a little bit later than your due date in Perusall. So I received this email question from a student after the first perusal assignment this semester. They wanted to know why they only got a 4 out of 10 on the assignment and claimed they had read the passage, made a comment, and introduced themselves. So I went to the grade book, which you can have a screenshot of on the bottom left, and sure enough, they made a 4. So I clicked on that 4. You get the full breakdown of why they earned the grade they got, which is super useful. And as you can see, the student made 2 annotations. They were on time. They weren't complex. They only got a 1 out of a possible 4 for quality. They didn't get a penalty for only commenting or reading one part of the document, so that's good. Because they only commented twice with low quality comments, though, they only received 8% of the full credit instead of 75%. They earned the very small target for opening the reading. The reading target itself wasn't bad. Remember, that's how many pages they viewed. So they got 23% out of the possible 35% credit for that. But take a look at their active reading target. It's only 6%, which tells us once again, the student probably read the first few pages, scrolled through the rest, left it open to see if it would give them a score. Perusall doesn't do that, so their score was pretty low. They also didn't get any responses to their comments, so they didn't get any points there. They got a few points for upvoting other student comments, and all of this added up to a 4 on the assignment. So the more students read, and the more students talk to each other about the reading and comment on it, the better their grades are. To learn more about how the student did, we can go to the Student tab, which is up here, and select their name. Of course, I've blocked out all the other student names here. We can see the students' annotations, when they were made. If there was a question about the deadline, that's very useful, and what scores they received on each of the assignments. Above, you can see how many total comments they've posted recently and how much total time they've spent on those assignments this year. If you had a student drop the class and it bothers you to have them keep showing up in your Perusall gradebook and they're not in your Canvas gradebook, this is where you can unenroll them from the course. And you don't have to worry too much about that because Perusall will still save their grades in case you've done this by mistake. And when they roll in, they call it re-enrolling, but if they go to Canvas and click that assignment link again, it will repopulate their grades. So it kind of saves you from yourself there. So I hope that gives you some idea of how you could use Perusall in your own classes, especially in online classes, to build a little community between your students and to get them more comfortable interacting with us as the instructors and asking us questions as well. My info is up there. If you do decide to give Perusall a try and have a question about it, feel free to email me. And if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Rachel, I actually have a couple of questions, if that's
Sure.
okay. One of my questions is about how exactly Perusall is scoring the complexity of comments. How exactly does that work, if you know?
So basically, they're using AI to do it.
Okay.
And if a student writes a very simple sentence, and it's one sentence, it's not going to get scored very highly. If they are using more complex words and it's a compound sentence and there's several of them, more highly. And of course, as the instructor, you can also come in behind them and, make sure that they're not just writing gibberish, which wouldn't work, right? And I also have a feature turned on in Perusall where if they post the same comment twice, it warns them not to do that and it doesn't give them credit.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Mhm.
I have other questions too, because this is so interesting to me, but I want to give other people a chance to ask questions. Anyone else?
I got a quick question, Rachel.
Sure.
With that duplicate assignment option, can you switch out the reading? So like you duplicate it and it saves all the settings and everything that you've done, but then you switch out the reading. Is that the idea behind that?
I'm not sure that's the point because once you set your grade settings in the course, it applies them to everything unless you change it. So it could work if you've done, one set of grade settings for the whole class, but then you've got this 1 or 2 other assignments that you want graded differently and you duplicated that, it might work in that case.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? All right, can I ask another one then?
Feel free.
Okay. So you talked about how students could tag you in a question so that you could respond. And I wasn't sure, can all students in the class then see your response to that question, or does it go directly to that student?
All students in that student's group can see my,
Okay.
my response. So I normally aim for like 8 to 10 students in a group, knowing that, you know, just by the numbers, somebody's going to drop, someone's not going to be as productive. And I still want a group of 6 to 8 that are really working. So if a student in their group asks this question, only the other students in the group can see it. And then when I reply, the students in that group can see my response.
Okay.
Now, as the instructor, if I go in and just want to highlight something and leave a comment, all the groups can see that.
Okay. That's really great. I was also wondering, have you ever provided your students with kind of like what you've done for us today, kind of like a Perusall training session at the start of the semester?
I do a quick video with the screencast where they see how to log in, and we spend a lot of time talking about you have to hit the link in the module every week or else it won't move your grade over, and it might show a 0 if I don't catch it, and you know, all of that. And I make a lot of comparisons to Facebook and Twitter because it's really, especially the Facebook layout. I keep that how to use Perusall page that I've made in the class resources module in Canvas. And it goes over, you know, the 5 or 6 things that earn you credit. I don't go into as much detail. Like I'm not going to tell them how it's tracking active reading,
Sure.
you know, for obvious reasons, but it does tell them like, if you are reading and not just opening the page, this is how you earn credit, those types of things.
Okay.
So they do have a little kind of screencast video with me walking them through it, and then they have the page they can refer to. And you get quite a few questions the first week or two, not too terribly many, you know, as many as you would get about Canvas and that sort of thing. But they tend to get the hang of it pretty quickly.
Okay. And you kind of answered another question that I had, which was, do students see or do they know about those kind of grade breakdowns in terms of like the active reading score, the content target score?
Yeah, I don't think they can see on their end how much of each thing they got. They see their final grade on the assignment.
Okay.
So typically it's a student who tried to, I don't want to say cheat, but you know what I mean, who emails me and I'll come back with, well, this is how much you earned for this and for that and for this and so on. And I've never had any of them, you know, challenge that once they realize that I can actually see when they're actively reading and not, you know, they understand what they have to do to earn the credit in the assignment. And it is my favorite thing about Perusall. You know, we pull our hair out trying to make sure students actually do the reading. And now we have a program that gives them credit for actually doing the reading.
Yeah. Are you transparent with your students at the start of the semester about, even if they can't see those breakdowns for each individual assignment, do you tell them like, these are the things that this program is tracking, and it will know if you just open the page and don't actually do the reading and that kind of stuff?
I don't talk about how it tracks or what it's looking for, but I do give them the 5 or 6 ways they can earn credit. And I do have a difference between reading and active reading. I just tell them it's not just scrolling through the pages. It wants to make sure you're actually doing the reading. And we kind of leave it at that. But they know the 5 or 6 ways that they can earn credit.
Okay, thank you. Now that I've dominated all of the questions, does anybody else have anything to ask? You can also type into the chat if you feel more comfortable doing that. FYI.
I would recommend keeping it pretty lenient, especially the first time you use it. You know, like I said, I don't want students trying to game it or, you know, figure out exactly how many minutes here and there they need. I want them to know if they are mostly reading that document, they will get credit.
Rachel, have you ever used it for video or podcast or anything other than reading?
I haven't. I have several colleagues who have. Podcasts, it helps in that sometimes you have students who can't keep their kind of brain focused on the podcast without something to look at. And so it gives them something to look at. They can add comments. They can see other students' comments in time, with the podcast. For videos, I haven't done it, but I have that colleague on Twitter who talked a bit about it, and it worked really well. He said it works better for smaller videos. So I think that one was probably 8 minutes versus like an hour-long video. But I know some people actually put their lecture videos into it so that students can ask questions as the video is progressing. They can comment about the lecture material, and then the professor can go back and see those conversations.
Great, thank you.
That's a really neat idea to do it with lecture videos.
Mm-hmm. There's all sorts of stuff you could do with it. I know someone who was doing, I want to say like mock trial stuff. They would put their trial documents in Perusall, and that way everyone on the team could annotate the evidence together. So you can do assignments like that, especially when they're going over evidence and trying to really get into a text. And just for regular reading, it seems much more conducive to how students normally read.
Neat. Well, anyone else before we wrap it up?
And I know I went pretty fast over the setup and stuff, but the slides will be available on the website as well as the recording. And of course, email me if you have any questions, or email Brad.
Yeah, so I've been recording the session today. So if you want to revisit anything that Dr. Gunter shared with us today, I will upload the recording and post a link on the CTL website along with the slides that she shared today. And I usually am able to get that done within a day or two. So if you want to revisit any of it, just check the CTL recordings page and you'll be able to find a link there. Thank you everybody for being here today. And thank you so much, Dr. Gunter, for sharing this with us. This seems like such an incredible tool and has so many wonderful features to really help engage our students and, as your title suggests, help them build community with one another. So thank you so much for sharing this with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, Allison.
Thank you, Brad.